Today, I'm joined by Dr. Stella Lee. She's the founder of Paradox Learning and one of the most thoughtful voices in EdTech and AI strategy. Stella and I had first met at the Product Summit YYC a few weeks back. She has over 20 years of experience helping organizations think differently about how they design learning, and had worked with governments, universities, nonprofits, and private companies around the world, including groups like UNICEF, the United Nations, the Asian Development Bank, TransLink, and provincial governments across Canada. She's also an advisor for startups, a longtime columnist for Training Industry magazine, and someone who's been ahead of the curve when it comes to things like AI in education, ethics by design, and building learning systems that truly center the learner. Stella's work focuses on helping organizations ask better questions. Questions like, are we including the right voices? Are we being transparent? And not just, can we build this, but should we? Stella, welcome to the show. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Marcus.
You have a really interesting background, starting with a PhD in computer science. Your audience has now turned into a group of people who are interested in e-learning. How did you navigate from this computer science PhD into really now founding Paradox Learning?
I think to me, it's just a continuum of my learning and professional development journey. I actually started out as an artist, as a visual artist, and then I ended up getting a PhD in computer science because I was always very interested in the intersection of art and tech. And of course, what kind of complete the Venn diagram is my love for education and learning. It's just always an ongoing exploration of where these three domains intersect. And what I do with my consulting work just fits perfectly in my happy place among those three domains.
Yeah. Is that not like the goal of what you're trying to do?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still figuring out what I want to do when I grow up. So this is kind of, along the way, exploration, I think.
Yeah. As someone who really loves the arts as well, I had grown up playing piano and, I had gone to school and studying engineering. And so there was always drawings that you'd be doing and just getting kind of hands-on, thinking design-wise. What's the element of art that comes with the territory of e-learning?
The element of art, that's a great question. I don't want to stereotype art as in paintings or as in sculpture or anything like that. That was what I study and practice. I still practice that. But I think it's the creativity process that really set me up for life in everything that I do. It's not just in trying to figure out, what I'm going to do with my canvas, but it's really, it's an iterative process of exploration, of knowing that there's not one perfect solution, knowing that there's multiple channels that you can explore and go into, and it's not always obvious, right? Like you give yourself the freedom to pivot, to change your trajectory, and also to be able to constantly having that conversation with yourself as you're developing a piece of art, or as you're creating a piece of software, as you're managing a product. It's not a linear process. There's always back and forth. There's always things that are unexpected. You might, hit a snag, or it might delight you by going on a different direction. So I think that creative process is what I try to incorporate into everything that I do.
You're probably familiar with the expression, this is my canvas and this is my brush. What would be like an example of a canvas and a brush that in your work you've really enjoyed using, just to help people get a sense of what really is e-learning? Where have we seen this before?
E-learning is a very broad term, and it has changed over time. Early on the days when e-learning became a name, it's just like any new media, we were still grappling with what does it look like. It's like when web came about, it's like, what is a website, right? And as human, our immediate response is, well, let's talk something we are familiar with. and replicate it in the new media or new platform. We've seen that happen with television. When television first came about, they took radio play and they replicate exactly that on television without understanding television is a different media. There's different affordance. If you look at early production of television is a visual medium, this illusion of space, this perspective that you can play with. As opposed to radio is this audio, so you don't really care about the visual. So everybody just line up across the screen, right? Over time, you're like, oh, hang on a minute, we can arrange them so people look like they're from a distance and some are closer, so you develop things that are more suitable for the medium. Same with e-learning. At first, we just replicated what we've been doing in the classroom. So we would do a webinar whereby we broadcast to students, like in a lecture hall style. And so a lot of the early day e-learning were very much like a classroom setting, except it's digital. So that's kind of the first wave. Not terribly interactive, not engaging. And that has evolved into thinking about it, if you're putting it online, if you're doing it in a course format, we need to engage the students. And it kind of coincided with Web 2.0 when we decided website is not just one dimensional, like Web 2.0. It's where e-learning 2.0 kind of happened. It's that you have users, you have learners. So you need to not just broadcast information to them, but their content, the user-generated content, the user-generated feedback is just as important. So we kind of incorporated that. And now we kind of think beyond courses. We kind of think beyond just like a one-time event. It's not like you took a course and that's done, right? Like, I know you're a lifelong learner. You're still reading, you're still attending conferences, you're talking to people, you're doing a podcast. These are all lifelong learning opportunities. And I think digital or e-learning has also evolved into this much more diverse, more nuanced, more varied format that's much more organic to how human actually learn and grow.
Yeah, there's this arc of it evolving, and I think the radio to television analogy is so great. And as things become more rich in the way the dimensions that they can connect with an audience, so does the way that people can become stronger learners. Now, you've been at this for 20 years. From the arc of that timeline, what kinds of themes, and this is really what I want to get into, is like the AI ethics, like what are we doing now?
Right.
What has been kind of the arc of this learning journey that has been in demand over time?
I think it's kind of reflection of the needs of our times, and as well as the maturity of the technology as well. And also in terms of the workforce transformation as well, right? Like in the early 2000s, I would say we were just busy digitizing things. And not just learning, but just organizations in general, right? Like a lot of just paper-based work that need to be organized and sorted digitally. And then you see some platforms and systems being introduced kind of mid to late 2000.
This digital transformation, which is still
transforming.
Yeah. I
feel like now it just got slapped onto AI transformation, whereby it's catching the tail end of digital transformation, and now it's AI transformation. So it's never ending. So I feel like that mid to late 2000s is when a lot of the digital transformation it's happening, and it's still happening, as you say. And a lot of platforms and systems blossom around that time. Later on, in maybe the 2010-ish, then you start seeing more social learning, more learner engagement type of learning. You get gamification or gamified learning. They also start using a lot more social learning theories and techniques and technology that builds based on human inherently social and wanted to interact and learn collaboratively. And it's the same, it goes in parallel with what's happening elsewhere too, right? Like in the product world, you see a lot more social collaborative platforms that regardless of learning, right? You get, I don't know, you remember Yammer? Microsoft Yammer? It's like
I remember whispers of Yammer.
Yeah. And then now we get Slack, we get Discord, we get lots of still very collaborative social channels. So that's started from the early 2010 onward. And then I think from the mid 2010 to now, cloud computing, data, personalization really start hitting big because computing gets more powerful, storage cheaper, and the computing techniques have evolved. I think a lot of the AI techniques that we are using today, like machine learning and neural networks, start coming out around that time. And so that also changed the landscape of learning by incorporating this type of newer technology.
Yeah, this element of personalization can deliver content to you in a way that is much more palatable and unique to how you would best engage with it. AI systems can be trained on tons amount of data, so these models are being introduced with the data that it has. Do you see in your work that there are very real risks where personalization can actually introduce biases and problems?
100%. So personalization also maybe it's a little bit of a misguided term. I think a lot of the technologies is adaptive learning or adaptivity. Like for people that don't understand what that means, it's like you go to Amazon and recommend books to you, right? Based on your purchase history or based on like your friend bought this book, you might also like this book. Same with Netflix, same with Spotify. Some have a social component to it whereby it would say, oh, your group of friends bought this book and you might like it as well based on who you connected to or based on your past browsing pattern. Like you click on this thing. YouTube is famous for that. You even click on it once, it start recommending the same thing over and over again. Now, for entertainment, it's fine. If you don't like it, you can always just ignore it. For learning, though, I think, first of all, the risk is that it kind of puts you in a very much narrower box. If you are, like certain learning content, perhaps they recommend more the same. But what about, as you know, learning is not about feeding you the same thing over and over again. It's about maybe challenging you. You think about a good coach. It's not like, oh, great job, you do the same thing again, we'll give you more the same thing. But it's to know when to push you, right? But also when to step back and give you some encouragement. Because we're human. We don't have the same performance level every day. Maybe certain days we need more pushing, and maybe certain days we need to see, we get discouraged and we need to take a break. And a good coach would recognize that. But recommended systems don't always get it. Like it's missing that contextual nuance. Did you know why when you watch Netflix, why they recommend you to set a movie? Does it tell you why?
I know you're prompted. It's like, vote how much you like this or when it ends.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't like this. I like this. I really like this.
Yeah. So you have some control, but not always or not really, because then you cannot say, I watched Legend of the Fall, but I actually don't like Brad Pitt. So please do not recommend any future Brad Pitt movie to me. You know what I'm saying? It's the degree of control you have on what's being personalized and recommended to you. So that's one challenge. And the other challenge is, I think it's particularly problematic if you're being recommended certain things because it makes assumptions about you that are wrong. For example, if they think you don't access the content enough, therefore the system flag you as at risk learner. Maybe that's a wrong assumption. Maybe you are just having a very busy week, therefore you don't log into the system. Or maybe if you actually downloaded the content and it's not being recorded, it's that you study offline. And then if that get flagged and if that automatically send it to your manager, maybe there's some repercussion in your performance review, right? To say this person is disengaged with this learning. So that's another risk. It's also could be risky if it's recommending the wrong type of content to you. And therefore, either it makes it too difficult for you to continue to learn. And therefore, you get discouraged and you give up. or it's too easy and then you get bored and you also decided to give up.
Right.
And so that's also a problem. And even when it gets it right, you don't necessarily want to always give people the same thing without giving them, you know, other content to consider. It's like, I like to say, when you go shopping, for example, in a shopping mall, you would chance upon things you don't think about you need, but you kind of run into it by accident. And when you do personalized or adaptive learning, sometimes it's so niche that you're missing a lot of the peripheral information as well. And those could be useful in guiding your learning that you don't, so you basically don't know what you miss because the system is not giving you an alternative pathway to say you've gone down this pathway, but these are the things you miss because the way it make decision is so opaque. So it's not giving you a good overview of what else is out there.
Yeah, that's actually one of the big reasons why I struggle to adopt the online grocery shopping service.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, I know I need eggs, I know I
Yeah.
need milk, but like I didn't think that, oh, those papayas look pretty good right now. Or, oh, you got some donut peaches. That seems awesome.
You also take the joy out of it, right? Because I think sometimes the exploration and discovery, it's part of the joy of learning. It's that you perhaps chance upon something that might not be directly connected to what you're doing or learning, but it's equally enjoyable and perhaps beneficial later on. And same with the joy of shopping, I presume. It's the joy of discovering that papaya it's on sale and you know, you happen to get a good deal and you bought it home. So
Exactly. No, let's get specific about, a time where there's a lot changing around us right now, especially for those who are working in tech or
yeah.
are embracing tech into their businesses. What right now do both people need to be aware of, and do the systems who are giving this adaptive content to people need to embrace and really respect to make sure that we can give people this kind of experience where we're not amplifying their biases?
Knowing what metrics are being collected or measured, or did you know what metrics your company care about you? That's never clear. I don't know how many people actually even know to ask that question or know that they have the right to ask, right? So knowing what your company or your organization or our government collected, are collecting data about us, and what are the intention of use, what are they using these metrics to measure us against, what criteria. So I think asking those hard questions and knowing your right to ask, it's really important, especially as more AI tools are collecting more data and it's even less transparent about it.
Yeah, this really speaks to one of these pillars that are so important in this adaptive learning world and with AI, of transparency. And, is there some standard that companies that you anticipate they'll be expected to be more transparent about than they ever have been before?
The cynical side of me say no. I think ultimately these are for-profit companies. I was kind of rooting for Anthropic, Claude.
Yeah.
And even then, even them seem to kind of gone the other way lately of pushing back a law for more transparency and privacy for data in California. So they, I think they also succumb to the pressure of staying competitive. So they are quite aggressively scraping data, right, online. And that's the problem. And I mean, large language models, their existence depend on scraping as much data as you can online, without giving the creators credits or compensations. So this is a huge problem that regulation hasn't caught up yet. Like New York Times is suing OpenAI, for example, for
Yes. Yes.
illegally scraping their data. Lots of online, a lot of visual artists are very upset about that because they put their work online and now it got ingested by all the image creation models, right? And and they get no compensation. They get no protection from copyright. The US Copyright Office still doesn't have a definitive guideline on what to do about that. So I don't know really. I think it's too early to tell if any companies are really making a commitment and making it more transparent, making it more private. They are nonprofit advocacy groups or nonprofit education-based or research-based institutes that are doing a lot of citizenship education, doing a lot of advocacy for fairness and transparency. An example of that is Algorithmic Justice League. They do a lot of advocacy for facial recognition work. And so I would encourage people to kind of follow them and see what kind of issues and companies and organizations they flag and what kind of research they are producing or what kind of recommendations they give you. The other one I really like is Distributed AI Research Institute. And they also do a lot of AI ethics research. So those are the two that I would recommend.
Okay, that's awesome. And definitely something that people who are listening to this should go into the show notes and find those specific sources. I'll make sure that they're included. Being a continual learner, especially in this time of massive change, understanding who are doing ethical things, who are not doing ethical things as it relates to these different areas. In one case, the visual recognition is very important. And now, by visual recognition, I believe you're referring to something that you had spoken about at the Product Calgary Summit, where dark-skinned females were 30% of the time misclassified, whereas white males were with software.
Yeah, it has a much lower accuracy rate. Yeah.
Yeah.
But even like facial recognition technology is a perfect example when an AI tech works. It's still putting people at disadvantage, right? Even when it works as it intended, it's used to flag people that perhaps the power to be don't like for whatever reason, and as a result discriminate those people from admitting to an event. It's been documented. There was at a Madison Garden in New York, there was an event that a lawyer got banned from admitting to a concert because her law firm was working on a lawsuit against Madison Square Garden, even though she didn't particularly work on that case. But her entire law firm photos got scraped and added to this facial recognition system. And then she got banned from going to a concert in her spare time.
Wow. I could only imagine like what kind of policy was MSG coming up with to then say, we're just going to roll this out and say, nope, sorry, you can't.
I'll find you the article so you can add it to the notes.
Yeah, I do remember reading this when it came out. It was, I think,
You remember
2
it
or
was
3
quite
years
a
ago,
famous
right?
case. So that's an example of when a tech worked perfectly as it intended, also caused harm. Not only when it doesn't work, causes harm. When it works, it also causes harm, right?
Yeah. I actually want to unpack that a little bit further because we understand governments, especially as you'd mentioned not long ago, are collecting huge amounts of data. They're adopting these systems. Yeah. Have you seen in government, in education, where some AI-driven solution has discriminated, left out voices, wasn't transparent? You know, in addition to this MSG case, that's a really interesting one. You know, where have we seen this elsewhere, and maybe even with more like harmful circumstances that we should understand and be aware of?
There are just so many over the years. I don't know about government too. I think in Holland, the Netherlands has a case whereby the government inaccurately assess people's, I think it's either childcare claims or some sort of benefit claims, and therefore penalize people from or falsely accuse people of making false claims, and the whole government had to resign. So that happened to national government, as well as you must have read Amazon a few years ago use a hiring tool whereby flag all the terms that has to do with female or women and give them a lower score in terms of, you know, qualifying for interviews. So they have to get rid of that tool. Schools, university had used predictive AI tool to predict new incoming students' success rate. And then to use that to strongly encourage low performing students to drop out. Therefore, they can up their retention rate. I think it's in the US as well. And that happens in education domain. A lot of education institutions are also using AI detection tools, as I mentioned in my talk, whereby if you're ESL, English as a second language speaker, you're at a disadvantage because your writing pattern is very similar to an AI generated output, and therefore teacher might falsely accuse you of plagiarism.
Wow. These are biases that they emerge after the fact. Someone
Yeah.
doesn't go in knowing that these exist. So we want to adopt this technology. It's the new age version of saying, yeah, I'm going to use electricity rather than, heating my house with fire. This is something that we need to be aware of, but at the same time, cautiously embracing it. And then if we don't, though, we're also left behind. Like, this is a real challenging
That's
dichotomy
the tension
or
between the two.
trichotomy. Yeah.
I think I mean that's two ways about it. I am not discouraging people from using it. I think if anything else, I encourage people to at least try it out, because you can't just be not knowing. Like you say, it's like electricity. You cannot not use it because they are benefits. They do change our life for better as well. And whether we liked it or not, it's already here in everything. It's in our fridge, it's in our bathroom, it's in our phone, it's in like subtle places you don't even think about. But at the same time, don't use it blindly. Don't trust it. Don't critically examine what are some of the limitations and some of the challenges, right? And also some of the, not just biases, but some of the assumptions that are baked into the tools. Like, they scrape data from somewhere. Are those data being scrutinized? Are they being cleansed? Is anybody going to look at it? Like, it's very different to scrape national data than regional data, because sometimes you take everything of Canada into consideration. And each province has very unique configuration, right? It doesn't apply blanketly to everything. But sadly, sometimes this is how these models work. And that's why they're giving you false outcomes. Or it gives you correct outcome, but that lead to a bad decision too, right? So there's many checkpoints we need to think about, from where did you source and train the data to it's the outcome, is the prediction accurate, and are there any outliers, and are we able to make decisions based on that as well?
Yeah. Well, so the audience that is listening to this podcast and reading the posts on this, they are predominantly product people and founders who are working in tech, and they may very well want to be looking at implementing some kind of AI solution into their product. If you're going to use AI responsibly, what new responsibilities do you, in your role, and being specific as to what that role actually is, need to start changing and embracing?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, don't trust it blindly, right? I think, yeah, as product people, I imagine you can't bypass AI now. You can't avoid that. So if you are to work with it, you need to understand there's also, different types of AI. There's the Gen AI, which taking a lot of attention, but there's also other types like what we mentioned, predictive AI, to kind of predict, are people likely to watch this movie? Are people likely to drop out of school if they have this kind of profile? Financial institutions use it to say, should I give a loan to this person? Would this person likely to pay it back? Right? Those probability models are also part of AI system. So first of all, I think we need to understand what type of AI we're dealing with, because each one has its limitations and risk and things we need to look out for. And then we need to also scrutinize the data. You might not able to directly, but I would say partner with your IT people, partner with other cross-functional teams, get into the conversation early, not just at the end, but I think you need to build that in your product cycle on the onset of the project. And also to ask about, like, if we're building this product, you also wanted to ask questions like, well, what if it goes wrong? What are some of the use cases that we didn't intend for? We giving people the wrong type of assumptions or incentives? And can we audit the model that this product is built on? And yeah, like what if when you release the product too, if a user flags an issue, what are your policies in dealing with it? Because there's so many AI enabled products now that only become a problem when people start using it, right? Because it's not obvious in the development stage or the testing stage. It's
Yeah.
only after you release it and people start using it en masse that you realize, hang on a minute, there's this bias now, or there's a glitch. So that's where policies become important, and that's where you need to also get on top of things. So I think if anything else, you have now expanded responsibilities that you are much more embedded with other teams.
Such a classic product management problem. Oh yeah, don't worry. So, this problem set is now just your responsibility. Here's more, more for you to care about and deal with. But so this responsibility to make sure that in the case of being used, generative AI is an example here that we can use where we've seen these problems where the user experience of how they might prompt or interact with Gen AI needs to be carefully tested adversarially. And we'd seen in the case, I think it was maybe a couple of years ago or 1 to 2 years ago, Air Canada had released a chat bot for their customer support. And I think the story went something like a customer had prompted for a bereavement fare and was promised that it could get that fare, but the bereavement policy wasn't in effect any longer at Air Canada or something like that. But essentially the customer was given the wrong information, but who would be thinking to be prompting a system for these tiny edge cases? It's like how it's so difficult for cybersecurity teams, internal ones, to plug every single hole, whereas an adversary only needs to find one.
And also, like, who's responsible for that, right? Like, is it the person who forgot to take down the old policy from, like, even if it got taken down, it might already got scraped. That data already get fed into a language model, right? Because you don't know when that happened.
Yeah.
Or is it Air Canada's responsibility? Is it the chatbot platform they bought? Like, is that the tech company's responsibility to mitigate this risk? It's also not clear, like, who's responsible for things, right?
No, not at all.
So that's another, I imagine we got work cut out for us to even figure that out and unpack that.
Yeah, it seems to me like this is the world of, people are wondering what are people working in AI ethics doing? Is this the kind of stuff that they're focusing on where they say, if you want to build ethical AI systems, if you're going to cite a source, make sure that that source still exists. If you're going to train a model on data that was once published, check to make sure that if you're going to be referring to how the model was, trying to infer on that data, that it's still relevant. I mean, that sounds like an absolutely giant problem.
And I would imagine eventually it's not going to be just AI ethic as a separate task. I think it's going to be infused into every job role because you're going to encounter this problem no matter what you do.
Yeah.
It's like cybersecurity, it's something we all have to do, right? Like, we don't put a password 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 now. It's not something we do.
We know better.
Yeah, so I think that should be a shared responsibility. It's also a shared understanding and education. And so I think it will be infused into a multitude of roles across the organization.
Yeah, I mean, this is one question that I really wanted to ask you, where, what we're learning on today is one thing, but where do you see the learning and development going in the next few years? Is it into this realm? Is it something else?
I think AI literacy is key. And by that, I don't mean just prompt engineering. I don't mean just learning how to write code. I don't mean learning what AI tools to use or building AI agents even, but it's understanding all these aspects of AI, right? And understanding from a human-centric perspective, like what's our place in that? And also at the same time, we need to take ownership of our understanding and learning and knowledge. But at the same time, we also need to push back and say to tech companies, to government, to organization, and it's like, these are your responsibilities too. Like, you guys need to figure out regulations. You guys need to figure out policies. You, for profit company, need to take ownership of not overhyping products or creating products that cause harm, whether intentionally or unintentionally. We need to hold them accountable for things. So I think having that AI literacy give us the weight, to push back, because you can't talk about things you don't know. So equipped with that knowledge, it's key. Just all the skills that we talk about, it's not just AI literacy, but also just essential human skills like creativity, sense making when in complex situation, as things get more complex now. And AI does not exist in vacuum. It exists in a socio-economic, geopolitical setting. So it's a very different ideology of the way they build AI in the US as they do in China. So we need to understand the context it sits in as well. And those are qualities that we need to heighten. I know we've been working on this for some time. UNESCO's and all the NGOs been talking about 21st century skills. And I think now it's time to revisit and look at it in light of AI and other tech development as well.
So for two different kinds of personas, one being the individual listening to this podcast, and the second being a company who is looking to embrace these systems, the new technology that's capable. Where are some sources of getting the right curated learning so that this kind of awareness is front of mind and we become more educated on this really important topic?
Yeah. So I mentioned the two nonprofit already, Research Institute. All Tech is Human is one I really like and I follow. I also like looking at different organizations' output on the AI literacies and AI education, like UNESCO, UNICEF. OCED has a new AI literacy for teachers now that just came out in the middle of a consultation round. So there's also opportunity to contribute to that. I like to keep up with podcasts like yours and others, and not necessarily just in AI, but I like Harvard Business Review that talks about business and leadership, often touches on tech and AI, but also bigger topics to put things in context. It's a good one. Hard Fork, it's much more tech, Silicon Valley driven. So I think that's kind of at the heart of tech development, but very American centric. I would also encourage people to look past North American resources to look at other parts of the world. NGOs are good places to start. And a lot of the nonprofit organization, Asia Pacific Institute of AI, Alan Turing Institute in the UK, are some of the AI research folks that I like.
This is really great advice. It's not only looking deeper into broad topics in that scope, but it's also about looking beyond our backyard and seeing around the world what kind of content is coming and emerging from this. A lot of people are looking up to your thought leadership, and they might wonder, in addition to all these great resources you've already put out about specifically this AI ethics, this awareness, in general, if I wanted to be more like Stella, what kind of books or podcasts? What kinds of books or podcasts or videos have you recommended to people lately? It can be fun or it can be related specifically to the stuff, whatever you like.
Okay. I think I've recommended AI snake oil. Did I in my talk?
Yes, in the product. Yes, in the product summit YYC.
The other book I read recently that I loved, it's called Your Face Belongs to Us. It's about facial recognition tech. It just gives you chills, and the roots are deep and very very informative. Unmasking AI is another book I really love, which also goes hand in hand with the documentary Coded Bias by the same researcher. Podcasts. I'm really trying not to listen to too many AI stuff because I feel like sometimes you get overwhelmed and feel a little bit hopeless and 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 even trying to catching up with things. But I like to listen to broader podcasts. I really like There's No Girls on the Internet. It's by a Black woman in the US, and she's very vocal about diversity and inclusion and ethics in tech, not just AI, but tech in general. I think last year in that podcast she talked about her mom passed away, and immediately she got hit by these tech firms to write like inaccurate obituary. And the tech firm's obituary was published before her family managed to write one. So in terms of
Wow.
ethical issue, that's
No kidding.
and her mom was quite a known person. I think she was like a surgeon in her city. So these companies trying to capitalize on her status as a famous surgeon and therefore wrote a inaccurate obituary as if the family wrote it, and people didn't know and thought that was a genuine obituary. So they talk about that as an ethical issue. Very super interesting. It's not something I would have read anywhere else.
Yeah, no kidding. Those are awesome recommendations,
Yeah.
Stella. We'll make sure that all of that is in the show notes too. But I want to thank you so much for being generous with your time and sharing all of your wisdom and insights on this topic. It was a lot of fun chatting with you, Stella. So thank you so much for being here.
Well, thanks for having me.
If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to like and subscribe to this content on your favorite podcasting platform or on YouTube, as it really helps others discover the platform. Thanks for listening.